Right, and maybe to get us to start that conversation about blood and the blood shortage in Kenya. The world marked World Donor Day on Monday, that's the 14th of June, and Kenya, of course, aims to get 12,000 pints of blood by the end of the blood drive, which was, of course, launched on Monday by the Ministry of Health. According to the ministry, this follows ongoing shortage of blood in the country. The ministry says it is putting in place better governance structures to deal with transparency issues that have marred the Kenyan National Blood Transfusion Services.
They streamed in, eager to lend a hand, one which would go a long way to save a life. This has been the norm each year. Nahashan Juguna is donating blood for the first time.
Nilikuwa nimetoka huko town shughuli kidogo, nikapitia hapa Wolf Park, nikapata kuna kitu inaendelea, na mimi nikasema nikuwe mmoja wao. Juu sijai donate, hata mimi donate nisaidie mwenye anahitaji hiyo damu.
According to the Kenya National Blood Transfusion Service, Kenya needs at least 500,000 pints of blood annually, a number which has become unattainable in the recent past. This has been attributed to major challenges that the service is facing, marred by gross mismanagement of the blood services and the outbreak of COVID-19.
Ile kitu naweza uliza serikali yetu, wakaze mkazo kwa wenye wanaenda kutumia damu vibaya, za zingine unasikia kwa news inauzwa. Sasa tunaweza omba serikali, juu sisi tunajitolea kupeana damu, nayo ifikie mwenye anahitaji hiyo damu sana.
For this 3-day activity, our target is 12,000 units, and we want to be able to at least for 70% of that transform it into components, which means that not just whole blood, but you can give, packed cells or plasma or, additional components. What that does is that it allows that for every pint you can reach way more people.
With an aim to increase donation centers across the country, the ministry has announced the appointment of county blood transfusion officers across the country.
We are asking Kenyans to come out, and specifically the individuals who have the rhesus negative blood type, the people who have blood group O negative, AB type. Those are very rare blood groups.
The ministry is looking to upscale ICT services at the Kenya National Blood Transfusion Services to enhance transparency.
In terms of strengthening the management and governance, we are looking at establishing it as a state corporation in line with the Health Act, so that it can enjoy some level of autonomy, which will help it in terms of, again, just ensuring there is proper governance.
According to WHO, men can donate blood 4 times a year and women 3 times in a year. In Meru County, officials spearheaded today's celebrations by holding a march in the town, sensitizing Kenyans on the need to donate blood.
Next itakuwa ya 41 na nafurahianga sana na hii si mwisho, nitaendelea hivyo hivyo.
This year's theme is Give Blood and Keep the World Beating. Helen Aura, NTV.
The shortage of blood in the country and what we all need to do as partners and stakeholders and, of course, the public to make sure that we replenish our stocks. That's what we're talking about this morning on Your World. And, of course, I have my guests who are joining us this morning to help us dissect this conversation. Alice Mboi, she's the Principal Manager of Quality Management System at the Kenya National Blood Transfusion Service. Good morning, Alice, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Victor. Thank you.
Also, we'll also be joined shortly by Dr. Nduku Kilonzo. She's the head of the Kenya National Blood Transfusion, of course, as we kickstart this conversation of the day. But we also want you to be part of this conversation. That's why we ask you on our question of the day. Have you ever donated blood? Have you ever donated blood? And, of course, please share your experience. What was your experience like after sharing, of course, donating your blood? And maybe while you do that, you could also add if you have ever gone back, because one of the things we have noted is there's a huge imbalance between people who are donating blood for the first time and those who come back, of course, as repeat donors. Tweet us at NTV Kenya and at Victor Kiprop _ using the hashtag #NewNormal. You could also follow the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, where we are live. Of course, if you're not on social media, you could also call in on the numbers which will be below your screen of course, a short while. And of course, maybe Alice, to just start us off, as I mentioned, of course, as we started this show, a day rarely passes before you run into this message on WhatsApp or on Twitter of someone who's appealing for help, an urgent blood appeal to save someone in their family who is, of course, in urgent need of blood. This should not be the case, isn't it?
It should not be the case, yes, Victor.
Yeah.
However, with changing times in terms of main health issues,
yeah,
the blood needs will continue to rise. The biggest challenge is that inability of having the blood in stock waiting for the patient. And that's why we keep getting so many appeals from relatives, from hospitals appealing to get a pint out of blood.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, and of course, then this is why we have the drive that was launched the other day. Maybe you can just briefly talk to us about the objective of this drive.
First and foremost, our objective was to appreciate the donors who've donated blood.
Yeah.
Number two, to recruit more donors by creating awareness of the needs to donate blood. And number three, to be able to collect a unit or two to save a patient's life.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And as I mentioned, of course, Dr. Nduku Kilonzo, she's the head of the Kenya National Blood Transfusion, will be also joining us. She's already here with us. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me here.
Okay, let me just pick up from where I started with Alice, and I was asking her that if you're on social media like I am, 2 days do not rarely pass before you find someone, of course, who is urgently appealing for blood, and they have to circulate the message on WhatsApp, reach out to family members or even strangers because they really need to save their kin who is in urgent need of blood. And I was asking her if this should really be the case.
So first, thank you for having us and for giving us this opportunity to talk about blood and why it is so important.
Yeah.
As I answer your question, let me start by saying that should not be the case. However, over the last 2 months, the National Blood Transfusion Service, any single call that has come that we have come across, and we have told all our networks, please, any call, send it our way. We have been responding to it, so that over the last 2 months, we have seen about 32 online calls since March, April.
Yeah.
And we have responded to all of them except 2, those that we have seen.
Okay.
So again, I will say, for Kenyans, please just feel free to get onto, if you're on social media, to let us know where the blood is needed. There is Facebook, there is Instagram. We have all of those platforms, and we'll try our best to be able to ensure that we respond to the needs of Kenyans.
Yeah.
But I think the bigger part of this equation is that is why we are raising blood. There is no substitute in terms of medicine for this medicine called blood. If it is not available...
And that is very, very important to put it out there, because for nearly everything elsewhere in this life, you could almost manufacture more. If it's a mask, you can get another one. You can import another mask, you can import beds, you can import medicine and vaccines, but you just cannot...
There's no substitute. So that's why we keep saying and calling on Kenyans and saying, please come and donate. And I really first have to say thank you, because what Alice has said around World Blood Donor Day being about thanking Kenyans. We have, since January, this is the 4th drive.
Yeah.
And each drive we see more and more people. Valentine's, we had about 5,000 Kenyans coming out, 6,000 Kenyans coming out in 3 days. International Women's Day, when we're talking about women bleeding and saying we need more blood.
Yeah.
The Boda Boda drive, which we did about a month and a half ago, almost 9,000 Boda Boda actually came in a space of less than a week and donated blood.
Okay, okay.
This is the International Women's Day, and as of yesterday, we had more than 5,000 units. So that is why I'm saying that as far as being able to provide when Kenyans are asking, we are actually responding every time we see anything online and from facilities.
And that's important because, I mean, from where I sit, most of the time you get the feeling that we rely so much on the kids, the students who are in school, because they are a bit more organized. But when COVID came and no one is in school, it just takes you back a bit and you realize you really need to find another approach.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
So we found ourselves with COVID here,
Yeah.
without really blood in the system. And most important is also not only just about COVID, also saying that actually, look, we need people who donate from 16 years to 65. 16 to 18, 20 maybe, is where school going is. What are we, 20 to 65, that's a whole 45 years of people who we are not tapping into. And that's why we have gone out to start segmenting, to start talking about issues, to start talking about different populations who we know are healthy populations, who we are saying you can donate. And because blood is a little bit, as Ali said, like a fast-moving good, it has to come in, be processed, and go out the shelf. You can't store it for, I can't collect all the blood I need today to be used next year. Oh. Because, yes, it has, fresh blood has a shelf life of 42 days, and I think Alice can talk a little bit more about that.
A challenge, right?
Yes, that's
because it means we can't, you can't like hoard or accumulate for your future.
Nope.
Okay.
So that's why we have to keep saying, keep coming, because as it is coming in, it is being processed. Sometimes it will be made into components, and then it is going out of the shelf or out of the store or out of the bank, so to speak. So you do find that therefore what we need is people to keep coming, donating, so that at any one time, and that's why we say men donate 3 times a year, 4 times a year. Women donate 3 times a year, because if we all actually have been saying, I wish every Kenyan would, who is eligible, would on their birthday, go out and give a pint in appreciation for the year you have been given.
Okay, and maybe I can bring in Alice at that point, because she raised a very important point about the fact that you can do this 4 times a year. How does that work? Does the human body have the ability to regenerate blood 4 times a year?
Oh, sure. That's very correct, Victor. We start by stating how many times each adult can donate. And like Dr. Nduku has put it, male adults can donate 4 times a year. And as human nature is, your red blood cells, which is mostly what we harvest when you are collecting blood from you, they do have a lifespan of 120 days. So every 120 days, in fact, every other day, your body is working to replenish the cells that are aging, and we can only have them for 120 days. And we keep saying, even if you don't donate it, the blood, those cells will again be removed from your body because they are going to be considered as aging. And the human body is able to replenish the blood that you've donated in a span of about 2 weeks. But for safety purposes, we usually give men up to 3 months to be able to attain the same amount of blood levels. And then for female, we give up to 4 months because of of course, the psychological, physiological nature where we have to go through menstruation every other month.
So part of the blood is lost also.
Basically, it is safe every 4 months for a female and every 3 months for a male. You still have enough to donate again and again.
Alice, when I was in high school, I tried to donate blood, but I was told, I was underweight. I can't remember what but I was told, I think I was underweight, and I think the minimum was it 50 kilos? That means not everyone can do it, right?
Yes, yes. There's that eligibility process that every donor has to be taken through before you qualify to donate. And like you've clearly put it, you have to weigh 50 kilograms and above. And again, we also check for your, what we call hemoglobin level, that is in relation to blood, and it has to be 12.5 up to 18.5 grams per cent. And again, you have to be of good health. You don't have to be experiencing any symptoms. Like mothers, we ensure that you are not breastfeeding. We also tend to rule out people who have pre-existing health conditions, probably so many other diseases that they can easily be transmitted through through blood transfusion. You ought not to be hypertensive. So there's a series of screening processes that each donor is taken through. In fact, our questionnaire comes with around 23, 24 questions, of which I know some donors, when they're giving us feedback, do say that those questions are too many, but this is just for purposes of ensuring safety, so that we don't pose a risk to the donor, we don't pose a risk to the recipient when we collect that blood.
And Dr. Nduku, according to the WHO, I believe, or our own even statistics, we should require between 500 and 1 million a year units, I believe, of blood. What is the gap between what we have right now and the ideal situation?
That's a question that I get asked all the time.
Yeah.
And I want to start by saying that what we have is not something we measure every day.
Okay.
We take accumulative. Remember, I said it's moving in and out,
moving out.
in and out. So the bigger question is, at the end of the year, will our accumulative have been sufficient enough for us to say, actually, we think we have met our need? Having said that, I know Kenyans also want numbers.
Yeah.
So I will say that obviously last financial year, not financial, calendar year, we did not do as much collections. Obviously COVID was a big issue, and we had just about 100,000 units for the entire year. Now this year, obviously, just if you look at the 4 or 5 drives we have had, actually let me put it this way. In the last quarter of last year, meaning October to December of 2020, and January to March of 2021, because those are 2 months, 2 quarters you can compare each other. In the last quarter of 2020, we had about 23,000 units. And by the end of the first quarter of 2021, we had about 63,000 units raised, given by Kenyans.
Okay.
And so essentially, I think the key point to answer your question is this: we have had a deficit. But it is these efforts, it is the fact that Kenyans are coming out willingly to give. It is the fact that we are seeing more and more awareness about blood that actually is going to enable us be able to meet the gap that we need, and also reduce their pills, because when people go to facilities, they are able to get blood.
Okay, and so there's this statistic I saw somewhere about that every 10 minutes, about 7 Kenyans need blood and are at risk, of course, of losing their lives. I don't know how correct this is, and if it were correct, then that would mean about 1,008 people need blood. That should be every day.
If you combine, you know, this is analysis and analytical data, and you combine data relating to road traffic accidents, you combine data relating to maternal hemorrhage, or, you know, women who are giving birth and need blood, and you combine data on people who are getting cancer treatment and need blood or blood products.
Yeah.
And then you put all of that data together and you try and do some analysis.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of figures we get to. And so that tells you actually that we have been way below need. However, having said that, like I have said, as long as we are raising more, Kenyans feel comfortable that there is accountability for the blood that they are providing. And they also, everyone understands that actually when I give, I save not only 1, but up to 4 lives. Because for every unit, it can be translated into 4 or 5 products that can be used for 5 different people.
Okay, and maybe if I can come back to you, Alice, then how much does one person donate when it comes to the amount of blood that you donate per every visit that you visit, you donate? How much do you donate as a person?
Each donor is expected to give between 400 and 450 milliliters of blood. And like Dr. Nduku has put it, once we collect that blood, we are able to separate it into various components. If we can apply our maybe primary science of biology, where we know that blood has both the cellular and the liquid component. So once we collect and we take it to our processing labs, we are able to separate the cellular and the plasma or the fluid part of the blood, and you store them separately. So one donor, if the unit is found to be suitable, it can be able to be transfused to 2 different patients, because again, by separation, you'll be giving a patient exactly what they need, vis-a-vis giving them the fluid part of the blood or giving them the red cells that they don't necessarily need.
Okay.
So you donate 1 unit, you can go a long way in saving 2 lives, 3 lives, and even for pediatrics, you can separate that 1 unit into 4 different parts.
And maybe speaking about separation, separating the aspects, I think I read somewhere an issue about some people only requiring those specific components, maybe red blood cells, maybe this and that, and maybe only 5% of people requiring total human blood transfusion. I don't know if you can clarify what that means in scientific terms.
That is very correct. Whenever a clinician or a doctor who is requesting for blood are making a decision to transfuse a patient, that decision is made based on the deficiency or existing deficiency in a patient's body.
Yeah.
Sometimes you hear that someone is anemic. If you have anemia or you have low blood levels, we will not need to be transfused with the fluid or the plasma part of the blood. You only need the red cells to raise your plasma. And if you're given only the red cells, what we call the packed red cells, because when you are doing the separation, you tend to pack the red cells and then you remove all the plasma. Those packed cells at least have a greater chance of increasing your hemoglobin vis-a-vis when you're given whole blood. Essentially, whole blood is given probably for somebody who is, I mean, you've lost numerous volumes of blood, maybe in an accident, what we call massive bleeding.
Yeah.
Again, when you go to people who have bleeding disorders, they may not necessarily need the red cells. They could only be transfused either with the platelets or the plasma part of the blood. So that is correct. What you've been reading is actually giving the correct information.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's a vote of confidence in my reading. But Dr. Nduku, then this issue of the gap then raises a question. Are we not doing enough as a people to donate blood?
That's an interesting question. And I think the question is, are we not doing enough? I think the bigger question is, what could we do more?
Okay.
And I say that just to say that where we are, we have started on a path where we want to do a number of things. The first, obviously, is raise awareness about the need for blood. I remember just like your own, reaction when I said, are you aware that if someone doesn't have blood or blood products, there is no other substitute? The likely result is death.
Yeah.
And blood is not just given to as just the next medication. It is usually life-saving. At that point, a doctor has made a determination that the only thing that can save you is a product of another human being, from another human being, usually blood or any of its components.
So it's not a situation where we can say, Panadol haijafanya, wacha tutafute aspirin.
Nothing like that. and so the first thing, just the same way you said, wow, that's interesting, never thought about it that way. Perhaps we haven't done enough of teaching Kenyans, and that's what we are starting to do. Want to invest in a big way in getting Kenyans to actually recognize and say, we actually do understand blood. We understand why it is important. Understand why when I go and give, it actually, I am contributing to keeping somebody alive. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing in terms of what we need to be doing is also perhaps doing a little bit more targeted. So like, we have all these different populations. I was telling you, we have populations of border, we have populations of young people in universities, we have populations of older people, not older people, of people that are perhaps working in various sectors, especially industrial sectors. Why not just routinely go there and be able to collect blood? And I think this brings me to the third point. For the longest time, I think we have expected that Kenyans will come to us to donate. And we are saying, like any other service, you have to go out to where people are.
Because literally, I mean, we are in the factory, we are in the ward, and I'm supposed to come maybe all the way to your head office in Upper Hill.
Exactly.
It kind of makes sense why the approach has to come from your side.
So we want to be able to say, okay, can we have blood blood collection points in places that are not hospitals, are not our establishments?
Because walking into a hospital itself alone
Yes.
Yeah, can be, and on the issue of Kenyans being aware, forget about even being aware of the shortage of blood and maybe the issues that you raise. There are those that don't even know what is their blood type.
Yes.
And that's where perhaps we should even begin this conversation. You're an adult, you don't know what is your blood type.
That's a very interesting point you make, because I just learned the other day that the Convention on Transport, the Global Convention, World Convention on Transport, actually expects that when you get your driving license, that it should have the blood group pasted on it. I didn't know that. So I learned that the other day.
Yeah.
And so that helps us start to have conversations around, should we actually engage other partners, for instance, the National Transport and Safety Authority, and say, how do we work together for you to fulfill this mandate and for us to be able to get more Kenyans to know?
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you that our education cannot just be about blood is good for you, blood is not. It has to be about why it is that it is important for every adult to know their blood type, to give blood. And it also, we have to recognize that we don't know when we need blood. So I could be giving my blood here in Nairobi every, year, and then I end up in an accident in Mombasa.
Yeah.
I don't expect Mombasa tell me you go for your blood in Nairobi.
Okay.
I expect
Yes.
that when I get there, I will be served, because we like to say that blood is a national resource. If today, about some 3-4 weeks ago, we got on one of our platforms which we have created in a little bit to try and manage ourselves.
Yeah.
Someone saying, look, we need a rare blood type that is A negative.
Yeah.
In Kitui, and in the platform we looked around and there was only about 2 A negatives that were in the western part of Kenya, and we had to figure out how do we get that blood in the shortest time possible to someone else
Kitui.
there. Yes, to Kitui. Not that Kitui did not have any other pints or units, but they didn't have
that specific
unit that was needed by that person.
And maybe Alice can help us, because that's a bit of a challenge. The fact that, I mean, my relative, my brother, my sister, a friend needs the blood, and I am ready to donate. But the blood that I'm about to donate is not the one that they require.
Victor, now that's where the story about voluntary donation comes in. Because well, based on the culture, based on the maybe knowledge that we have, we've had so many of us say that I only donate blood if my relative is in need. But the question that we never ask ourselves is that what if I do not share the same blood group as my relative? And that's where the emphasis of donating blood voluntarily comes in, because I'll give, and it's going to save someone whose blood type we share. You give, and yours is going to be used by another person whose blood type we share, because essentially we don't have to, I mean, we may not necessarily be of the same blood type in a family. I could be, maybe by one of my parents is, be of another blood type. So really, we keep appealing to Kenyans. Let's stop the imagination that you only donate blood when your relatives in need. And again, most of the time, if a patient needs to be transfused, the doctor will not ask for 1 unit. So you ask yourself, what if you are the only other family member? Or the only other available relatives? Where are you going to get the second or the third type? So we keep appealing to Kenyans, let's donate blood. Let's have the blood in our banks waiting for the patient, not vice versa, where the patient has to wait for the blood.
Okay.
Yes.
And Dr. Nduku, this reminds me of something else then, that back then we used to learn that there are people who can be universal donors, and there are people who can be, I think, is it universal receivers, and there are people who can only be received from one specific donor.
Yes, and I think that's part of what Alice is talking about when she's talking about blood grouping, because we do find that, for instance, an O positive is a universal donor, which means that they can donate to anyone who has a positive rhesus, because you know we have blood in two forms, positive and negative. Anyone in the positive rhesus, so they can donate to A, B, O, and O, and the same for O negative. However, if you are A, you may not be able to donate to a B or an O, and so because our blood types, and remember, our bodies are very unique machines, and our uniqueness means that we react differently when new products are introduced in our body. That's why even today, if you take medication, for you could be allergic and the next person could not be allergic. So if you consider human blood being introduced into your body will react in different ways. And so yes, there are universal donors, there are universal recipients, and that's part of the education we are putting together, because we are putting together frequently asked questions, we are putting together just information that goes out in bits, so that we can say over the next, let's say, this number of days, we will give you facts, a fact every day on blood, just one fact. And if we can help push that and be able to keep moving that, I think will really make a big difference in Kenyans understanding why blood, what is my blood type, and so on and so forth.
And earlier on we mentioned the issue of how COVID-19 has affected schools where we used to get much of the blood that we depend on today. Has it also affected even people coming to hospitals to donate blood?
Of course. I think we all remember a time when nobody wanted to go to a hospital, to leave their homes, let alone go to a hospital. So obviously last year, and for COVID, we were all learning. Really, nobody knew what we needed to do. Now we have a much better understanding of what is required and how to be able to manage COVID. But I think the bigger issue is less of people coming to hospitals to donate and more of us going out to provide Kenyans convenience in donation. So that if you're passing in Green Park and you happen to be passing by on a, what do you call it, on your way to home from work, there is a donation center sitting right there in front of you that you can actually just think, I have, you know, another half hour to catch my bus or my matriz. So what do I do? Let me just spend this donating blood. But if I tell you to leave that and come to hospital, to Kenyatta, or to where, the inconvenience just means people who might even be very willing just won't do it. So I think part of it is less of people coming to hospital moving forward, and us more of being out there into the public domain and providing the opportunity for people to be able to donate. Okay,
Alice, before we started this conversation, I was reading the levels of infection for COVID-19 in Kenya. So far, I believe 176,000 people have already been one way or another confirmed to have had COVID. Some, of course, have recovered, a huge number of them. But now for those people, if I was an avid donator of blood, but now nilipatana na COVID mahali, can I still donate blood?
Yes, Victor, you can donate blood. But, you know, with COVID, just like any other disease, you go through the phase of the disease. You are tested, you are told you're negative. You will be told you are negative, but probably still be having symptoms of COVID. So what we say, you've turned negative, you've done a good number of days with 0 symptoms, then we can give you up to a month when you are symptom-free to donate blood.
Okay, Dr. Nduku, let's talk about the cost now. And I also read this somewhere about the average cost of providing safe blood or blood products ranges between 10,000 and 14,000 shillings per unit. Is this true?
Largely, yes. There's been studies that have been carried out across different countries, and actually some go as far as 25,000 a unit translated in Kenya shillings. And this is because of, when you think about blood, there's a number of processes, and perhaps Alice can talk a little bit more in detail. But every time you get a unit of blood, first of all, you have to think the process for the bags, then the separation, the component separation. That process is an expensive process that not only uses reagents but uses machines. But importantly is the testing. You have to test each unit for a number of transmittable infections, HIV, syphilis, hepatitis B, C. And then you also have to blood group and give people proper blood, assign proper blood group.
So that's where the issue of cost comes in.
All those processes have a cost element. Every time you test, you spend reagents. So what happens in the public hospitals, because I know Kenyans have asked this question, is that in the public hospitals, once blood is provided to them, they do what you call cross-match, meaning that they look at whether the blood type that has been given will match the blood type of the patient. So you'll find a cost of 600 to 1,000 shillings in public hospitals. That's usually associated with that extra laboratory function they have to do. In the private sector, they have to do all these tests, and therefore, when you come to get a unit of blood or a transfusion, then all those costs obviously are passed on to the consumer, who is the patient.
And that clarification is very important, because the person who, when I told them I'm going to have this conversation with you guys tomorrow, this person was talking about, yes, it's important. I want to donate maybe the maximum I can, maybe 3 times a year. And it is important because I'm saving someone else's life and they'll save mine tomorrow. But this was a question that I could donate even 3 times a year. But when the day comes when I need this blood myself, I'm charged this amount.
So I think the answer to that is this. If you go and get service in a public hospital, you will get the small charge of, usually it's between 600 and 1,000. I don't think there's any public facility that's more than 1,000 shillings for the unit, right? But for the private facilities, they then layer all these costs onto the actual processing of the blood, and then obviously those costs are passed on. So the question that I have been asked is, so how do you, given that I have been donating, whether it is into the public system or the private system, or I've been donating, and I want to go to a private provider, should I also, how are those costs going to be managed? And I think that is where we have some work to do. And I want to say that for the first time, the National Blood Transfusion Service has started engaging significantly with private providers. So a lot of the private providers associations, a lot of the private facilities, because we are discussing, and one of the things we are discussing right now is the national guidelines on the minimum standards for management of blood services. Because private sector is already doing blood services, but we have to have a framework that we are operating on. And at the end of the day, we also have Kenyans, whether they come to a public facility or they go to a private facility. And so in developing those minimum standards, obviously at some point, we will have to have the discussions around how then do we help each other so that the Kenyans who come, that there is a way, and especially the regular donors, because we are also saying, how can we make sure that regular donors are in a space where, regardless of where then they themselves require a service, they are able to get blood as they may need it. Those conversations are ongoing, and I think within the before the end of this coming quarter, really a lot of that will have been thrashed out.
All right. Before we take this quick break, let's just get to see what some of you have been saying on social media. Remember, we asked you in our question of the day, have you ever donated blood? What was your experience? Let's get to see what some of you have been saying. Masharia Shelby says, yes, but I think I will never do it again, because when somebody needs that blood, he or she has to purchase it. I think that's the issue that you just come from addressing. So I hope Masharia is watching. Ikuma says, yes, in a public hospital, but the service was poor. up to date. I have never received my card to show that I am a blood donor. Thank you. I think we will also try to respond to that. Otieno Anyango says, I'm a regular donor and every pint given equals to one life saved, even if it's in a small way. I got to understand that my health matters a lot, not only to me, but also my family, friends, and neighbors as well. Blood is life. Save a life and the reward is immeasurable. I think that's literally the overall message for this conversation. We have Ben Migosi who says, I did it when I was in high school. I was afraid at first, but in the end, I was happy and more energetic. Thank you, Ben Migosi, and I think Alice will be explaining later on the effects, because there are those who are a bit worried. And then Jeffrey Ombasa says, I used to, but after learning it's someone's side hustle, I said never. And I think, of course, Jeffrey is also pointing to issues of accountability. We discuss all the issues you've raised in your feedback after this quick commercial break.
Weka Collabo na Shell Shinda Fuso FI is back and bigger. Weka Collabo na Shell Fuels plus Shell Lubricants, Africa's Oshopata convenience shop. To enter the draw, dial *384*200#, enter the code from your voucher and follow the prompts. Terms and conditions apply.
Join us from 14th to 18th June in Nairobi County and Migori County and donate blood to save a life. Give blood, keep the world beating. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Health, Kenya National Blood Transfusion Service and partners.
Kijani Ridge is Tatu City's premier neighborhood, offering a 1.5-acre fully serviced plot in a controlled development. The plots overlook a beautiful dam with natural green spaces. Kijani Ridge is a walking distance from Rover Pioneer and Crawford International Schools. Families are already moved in and more homes are under construction. Contact us for daily site visits and own your dream home with us.
Embiid rolling in and slamming the lids on for Joel Embiid.
You want a superstar? That's what Joel Embiid is.
Embiid playing the best basketball of his career.
Here's Embiid thinking about a three. There it is. Yes! Wow!
He got some key footwork in there too.
50 points for Joel Embiid,
a career high.
First Sixers since Allen Iverson.
7 foot, 280-pound center with the ability to stretch the defense.
The most dominant big man.
Look up below. Embiid has been particularly dominant.
There's no more fun in games. He's done playing around.
This is why they have a chance. The greatness of Embiid, he can dominate any game.
Thank you for staying with your world on NTV this morning. We are talking about the shortage of blood in the country and what we can all do to make sure that we replenish our stocks as a country and we replenish our, of course, blood banks as a country and make sure that we save more lives, because without blood, more lives, of course, are lost. With me in studio this morning, Nduku Kilonzo, Dr. Nduku Kilonzo. She's the head of the Kenya National Blood Transfusion Service, as well as Alice Mbui. She's the principal manager for quality management system, as well as also at the Kenya National Blood Transfusion Service. Let me just pick up from where we left. And this is also something else I noted, an issue about people donating blood, but they don't come back. So we are talking about you donating 3 times, but there are people who kisha donate.
One of the most sustainable ways for any country, and countries that really have a sustainable supply of blood, as we said, it comes in, goes out, can't be kept, so it has to keep coming in, is having what you call regular donors, pools of regular donors. So perhaps maybe we need to be thinking about how can we create people who come back over and over and over again. If we had pools of regular donors, we would actually be able to maintain the bare minimum that is expected. And so that is one of the areas that we will be investing in. And as we have been looking at different populations, for instance, a border, we're already looking at, can we have a quarterly drive with that, because that's 1.4 million young people, healthy people who can actually become regular donors. So it's also about, on our part and on Kenyans' part, trying to be strategic. We've been talking about birthdays and you know, all these various groupings, and you know, we are February babies, March babies. Is it possible that we are actually saying, on this month, all the babies, we need your blood, and you just come once every year? So the idea is, how do we create people who come back routinely? Because that's the only way you have a sustainable system. And I think what you've asked is what we are doing about it. And that's why we're having these conversations with different people who can help us drive. And obviously we are looking at, in the next year, coming up with a better, more structured education approach and programming for communication.
Okay, and maybe then one of the concerns that was raised, Alice, on part of that feedback was the impact that this has on my body, especially for those of us who are not those. I'm not young. Oh my God! For the young ones, those who are in teenage, they are wondering, what does this mean? Does it mean I'm going to lose weight? Is it going to affect my health in any way? Just talk to us briefly and address those concerns.
Thank you, Victor. Blood donation is a very simple process. I think the only slight fear that a donor could have is just when the needle is getting to your vein, that tinkling sensation. Thereafter, within 6-8 minutes, you've filled your bag. Any effects thereafter donation, before a donor is deemed eligible to donate, like I said in the beginning, the donor is taken through rigorous screening process. And when I say screening, is checking whether your weight is 50 kilograms. I can't forget that, 50 kilograms and above. You also check the hemoglobin level of that particular donor. We also tend to ask whether you've had something in the last 6 hours, whether you've eaten. Because again, you know, when you are donating, you are losing fluid. And maybe some of the most common post-donation adverse effects that most donors will experience, some would tend to faint, or you feel dizzy a little bit just because of that loss of fluid. However, to ensure that does not happen, that is why this story about soda and biscuit comes in. It's
That's
not
what we used to be offered in biscuit.
it's not meant to reward you.
There must be people who did it for the soda, but it's fine.
Okay, and it worked. So it's not really meant to reward the donor. It's actually meant to replenish that fluid that you've lost through blood donation. You are not going to lose weight by donating blood. You are not going to fall sick by donating blood. And like I said, first and foremost, we have to ensure the safety of the donor before we draw that blood from you, because we don't want to get blood from you with the intent of saving a patient, and then we end up trying to look for means and ways of saving you as a donor.
Okay.
Then probably the other issue is about that donor who donated in a hospital. I'm glad they said it was in a hospital and they never got
the card, yes.
The donor card, yes. In Kenya, we have two types of donations. We got those that donate voluntarily, and basically those are the ones that will go to Kenya National Blood Transfusion blood collection sites, and then we'll have those that will go to the hospitals to donate for their family, those that we commonly refer to as family replacement donors. And many times when the hospital tells you as a patient, tell your people to come and donate, chances are that they may not have a provision of providing you with a donor card or a donor certificate. And I think that is where maybe the disconnect usually comes in. Probably it's not in their budget.
Yeah.
However, we encourage that donor, maybe in the next time when you are due for donation, walk into any of the Kenya National Blood Transfusion Collection Centers, and we can assure you that you get a donor card.
But what does this card mean? Why does it matter?
The card matters. Like Dr. Nduku said, I may be in a situation where I require blood, and as an emergency case, and there may not be that time to draw blood from me to determine my blood type. If you have that donor card, one, it's going to help you. And again, with that card, you are able to tell what your blood type is, and in that card, we always make sure that we've recorded for you when you are due for the next donation. So it can serve as a reminder, just like you have in your licenses that it's due for expiry on such and such a day. So for those that are really willing to donate, and I'm hoping at the end of it all, every other Kenyan will be willing to come for a second, third time.
Yeah.
So that can serve to you as a reminder when you are due for your next donation.
Okay. And Dr. Nduku, I think she raises a very valid point that sometimes you think I'm just donating to the hospital, but there is also some benefit for you in terms of knowing, as she said, I think I also saw issues of even screening for some diseases. Just talk to us about what is also on my side when I come to donate the blood.
Very true. When you donate blood, going for some of these tests, of course, it may incur a cost. So when you donate blood and we have it in our banks, we'll start by screening or testing for those diseases that can be transmitted through blood transfusion.
Yeah.
And basically we test for hepatitis B, we'll test for hepatitis C, we'll test for HIV, and we'll test for syphilis. We'll also go ahead and determine your blood group. For the blood group, we'll have clearly indicated in the donor card. However, because of confidentiality reasons, we may not have to tell you your serostatus that look here, we did a test and we found you to be infected with one of X or Y. So that will do what we call confidential donor notification. We reach out to you, ask you to come over, or we can come over to wherever you are, and then you are taken through that counseling process, and then you are referred to a healthcare facility.
Okay. And Dr. Nduku, you want to respond? Yes.
Well, I was only going to say that we are lucky we are in the age of technology. We are also beginning to look at what can our donor cards look like. Move away from paper cards to little cards. These days, everyone has little cards you carry, whether it's a supermarket or what.
When we were young, there used to be the yellow one. I think it was for vaccine. What was it? For vaccination or what?
Yes, and they still exist. And so what our plan is coming here is to move away from paper cards to go into cards, electronic cards.
Oh, really? Okay.
Then that way, even the information that Alice is saying we can't put on your paper card is available to you, because it's on an electronic sheet, so it's in a sheet. It still remains confidential to you.
Okay.
Yes. So that's kind of where we want to be moving forward.
And I'll come back to what exactly you're doing, of course, with the ministry. But kuna wale watu wanaogopa sindano kidogo, and they think nimedungwa sindano alafu ninafinya mara nyingi. Just maybe allay the fears of people who fear the pain when donating blood.
Actually, I had never really had it explained the way Alice explained it.
Yeah.
She said a little tingle on your hand. Actually, what we do is really, I can say we have some really good phlebotomists, the people who remove, trained to get blood, draw your blood.
Yeah.
And we then they try to ensure that it's a single insertion directly into the vein. So once it gets just under the skin, that's it.
Yeah.
There isn't pain. In terms of the, you know, squeezing the ball, that's the easiest way to make the blood come out faster so that you get done with the job even faster. So I think that that's what I would say.
Yeah.
I think the one of the things that perhaps is useful to mention is that part of why we have a very elaborate quality control system, and Kenya has been lauded for a quality control system when it comes to blood, is to make sure that any blood that is available to Kenyans is safe. It has gone through all the parameters, and that we declare that it is safe. And we've had accreditations, we have had other labs, you know, internationally come and look at our labs and do samples. We do external quality assurance by sending our samples out to independent providers so that they see whether the results we got are the results we got. And also we help institutions because sometimes when blood cannot be used, like for instance, if it is infected blood, it is what institutions sometimes use for their training. So we do actually work with the universities. They come for their samples and their cultures from the National Blood Service. So we are also contributing in different ways, even as we contribute our blood. And one of the bigger issues is, as we move forward as a country, we are not just looking at blood alone. We are looking at medicinal products of human origin.
Okay.
This includes other tissues, because blood is liquid tissue, and organs. And we are saying that we have to have a framework for being able to manage and to regulate the space of blood, tissue, and organ donation, transfusion, and transplantation. But importantly, do that protecting the donors as well as protecting healthcare providers, because currently we do not have a framework for organ transplants for this country, and that's part of what our remit has, you know, moving beyond blood is. And what we are doing is that a policy is now is under development. It has actually, should I say, almost been finalized for submission to the Director General, who will then give his concurrence for it then to go through the various offices. And I don't know whether this is a good time to mention somebody to relate to the comment on accountability.
Yes, I was just about to come back to that, because there's the question of where does my blood go immediately after I donate? Who is the beneficiary? And how is it accounted for? Because we have also had stories, I think the minister once commented on an issue they were investigating of even blood being sold. So just go into it.
So first I want to say that, it was an unfortunate situation, but I think this is, as you said, the minister commented. And when Minister Honorable Senator Kagwe spoke, I think one of the things he said is, we will deal with this, we will address it, and it will never happen again. And since then, a number of things have happened. One, there has been a complete change at the National Blood Transfusion Service in terms of leadership, in terms of management, and action, administrative action already moved forward with a lot of people who have been there in the past. But moving forward, so what are we doing? What are we ensuring that has to happen? And the first thing that we have focused on is accountability. And I think I have said this before, we are looking at a vein-to-vein system, track and trace. You should be able to put your blood in a bag, and we can trace that bag until Alice, who received that blood.
That's what you mean by vein-to-vein?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a track and trace system. We call it vein-to-vein because you're removing from here to the next
vein.
We have followed that
for a layman, it sounds like you connect her.
We are literally doing that using technology, but you see what I mean. So, and the first phase of that, the first thing we did internally, because you have to start internally, was to set up a very basic stocking system that is where people make daily returns, and every week we are able to analyze how much was collected and how much was issued. So it's a returns on our collections and our issues. That's why when I started, I said, as of last night, we had, just from the last 3 days, more than 5,000 units already collected across the country, and about almost 40 45% of those are already in components as we are speaking, and more component preparation is ongoing. So it is that internal system. The second phase is an inventory management system, and that's currently under development. Actually, we will be rolling it out with the managers, because all the regional banks and satellites, many of them have had management changes, staffing changes. We'll be looking at that inventory system and rolling it out starting next week, where it now goes beyond just issues, but it goes beyond what is received and what is issued, to starting to have really daily, should I say, supply chain management indicators. And then the last part is, we are doing all of this, there's a bigger system being developed, and this is where we will expect that all blood establishments will plug into this system. At least all blood establishments that receive any form of blood from the National Blood Transfusion Service, whether they are private, whether they are mission, whether they are county, whether they are, so that we have an integrated system for providers, for all transfusing facilities that is technology based, that allows us to know where is what are our stock levels across different banks, who needs what, and it can be technology has allowed it for us to be at the call of a button, as opposed to the past. Can we see a situation where we say, for instance, we have this type of blood in stock, but there's there's some shortage in this specific type, and maybe reach out to people, or there's a specific shortage in some certain parts of the country, you drive the campaign towards that side? Using the data. That is the whole goal of the ICT system. It's a blood management information system, and it's already work in progress. Okay. Yes. And maybe because you touched on counties, and it reminds me that health is devolved, and these issues, and most of the people are in the counties. We can't stay in Nairobi and rely on donations from Nairobi alone. So first, the drives we are doing are not Nairobi based. Currently, as we are talking right now, we have about 52 sites, blood collection sites going on across the country. So what you saw here in Nairobi in Uhuru Park, there is very many all over the country. Please visit them. Please also showcase. You have some in my village in Baringo. Baringo, I'm sure we have some in Baringo, but I'm not sure exactly the site as of today. But we do have. But I think the bigger question to that is the devolution of health, and we have already moved forward, because for the NBTS, in our view, our strategic direction is that we have to focus on quality control. We have to focus on strategic guidance, meaning the things you have said, how much blood you have, what should your stocking levels be, how do you drive distribution, how do you drive the commodities that are required. That is what, as the NBTS, we should be doing. And so we are encouraging counties to set up blood establishments, to set up blood collection centers and satellites. We have already, not only that, in terms of blood management, on a day-to-day basis, we have already then gone out and had meetings with all the counties, all the county committee executive members for health, and we have also met county directors of health. 42 of the 47 counties has, by last week, already identified and established offices of county blood transfusion officers. Because we need management of blood services. Those are the people who should liaise with us around where support supervision is needed, training is needed, where looking at any adverse events, hemovigilance, looking at if the adverse events of blood is needed. Yes. And maybe briefly then, before we start to wrap up, then there's the issue of then funding, because all these things involve money. So do we have partners, do we have donors, do we have people who are partnering us, especially on the resource side? So let me start by saying that we have had the Ministry of Health made a very clear commitment that blood being such a significant and important strategic national resource, it is definitely the government is going to fund it. So last year, I think it was announced that there were some resources to jumpstart a lot of the renovations, a lot of the getting banks back in place. From partners such as the World Bank. This year and moving forward. We have allocations from Treasury until the printed estimates are out. I cannot name any figures. I know the budget was read, but we'll wait for the printed estimates. But we do have our allocation from our national treasury as exchequer resources, as government funding blood and blood services as a central part of universal health coverage. It has also been identified as part of the universal health coverage package, and blood is now part of the essential medicines list. It has been put in the essential medicines list. So when you think about the essential medicines of this country, blood is right in there, which means that therefore it will continue to get financed.
All right, and before, of course, we wrap up, we asked you earlier on if you have ever donated blood and what's your experience like. We can't wrap this conversation without getting to sample much more of your feedback and what you are talking to us on social media. Kiendi Jr. says, yes, I did. But why is it sold in the hospitals? I donate for free and therefore it shouldn't be accessed at any cost by a patient. That is Kiendi Jr. But I think Dr. Kilonzo has already explained why that happens. And Jacadero Jr. says, no jobs, no food, no strength. Kenyans are tired of donating blood at zero cost and purchasing it at thousands of money. Time will come when no one will offer such like activities for free. Also, that raises the question of commercialization of blood, but I think that's another direction we want to go. Jackson Muya says, when we commercialized the blood donation is where everything fell apart. Literally, all this feedback is literally, pointing to one direction. And Jack says, make blood donation free and you will see an improvement. For example, that hospital will charge you to donate blood unless you are donating for a specific patient with an urgent appeal. I'm not sure about that. I thought it should be free, but I'll confirm. And Wilson MJ says, maybe we should introduce benefits for donors. That is important. We'll make sure that Dr. Nduku and the team responds. Matthews Ondoro says, the other time I donated blood and I heard that it was being sold through the back door. I stopped. Clearly. Much more right again, of course. The last one, Giddy activist says, we donate for free. They loot and then they come back here to the hospital. Wanatulipisha damu. Thank you, Gide activist, and of course all of you who have of course sent your feedback. I think Dr. Nduku, the two things that I've picked out, one is the issue of the incentives that we give to people who donate, and maybe once again you can just reiterate on the accountability measure that you're putting in place, because clearly many people are concerned.
Yes. So thank you very much, Victor. I think the question of accountability, we ourselves have to prove to Kenyans that there has been change at the service. And like I started by saying, the ministry did take the necessary action immediately. And we had a whole change in the sort of leadership of the National Blood Transfusion Service. We have now had changes across the regions and across staffing, and we have then put in, or try to harness technology to put in systems, starting with an internal management system, to just a supply chain inventory management system. And now, as all of this is happening, we are developing a national blood management information system. So that will help us enhance accountability. However, we do hear Kenyans, we do feel you, we appreciate. We are asking that you also appreciate that there is changes, that it is happening, and feel free every week to look at our website. We are starting to post what we have received for the week and what has been issued for the week, just as a weekly update on our website. So starting July, NBTS Kenya, National Blood Transfusion Kenya, starting July, given our target is to start it in the next financial year. That is what we'll be doing on a weekly basis, just updates where we are. So I am hoping that we can regain back the confidence of Kenyans, because there is work that is being done in that direction. The other one is the question of the benefits for donors. This is a question we continue to grapple with. But I think the bigger important question is twofold. One is people understanding that actually the charges that are aligned to blood is really all the costs that have to do
Yeah.
with the processing of the blood, with the testing of the blood, with the grouping
Because it's not just
of the
water
blood.
you pour into a glass and then give it to the next person.
It's actually very expensive, like you said, and those are global studies.
Yeah.
It's anything between 10,000, Kenya
14.
ranges around 11,000 to 25,000. South Africa is 25,000 a unit. Kenya is around 14,000 a unit. So you find that when you look at those costs,
Yeah.
if it is the private sector, then they will layer those costs onto you.
Yeah.
If it is the public sector, I think the cost is only the grouping cost.
Yeah.
But we do recognize that we must start to have the discussion around valuing blood. Because people are saying, at the end of the day, everything you have told me
Yeah.
is what you do in the back end.
Because someone
Me,
was
I give
asking for
free,
incentives, actually. Yeah.
and I don't get anything back.
Yeah.
In fact, I pay for it.
Yes.
So we are having those discussions, and I want to assure you that come another World Blood Donor Day
Yeah.
next year like this, I can guarantee you we will have had a lot of progress in having clarity of what the benefits are,
Yeah.
of how as an individual you will be able to gain whatever benefits, because without kind of saying too much, we are
Yeah.
even looking at working with NHIF for
Yes.
for how we can assist each other. So
Oh,
there's a lot of ideas on the table.
Okay.
At the end of the day, we'll take what makes most sense,
Yeah.
what is most viable, and what will help us get the optimum benefit to the Kenyan who is donating.
And I hope I hope that now that you've made that promise, you know I'm making a promise to hold
I
you
know you'll
accountable
follow
to
me.
that.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
we will. Yes.
All right. And,
yes.
and ladies, then we have to wrap up this conversation. I'll just get your closing remarks during this period when we are, of course, asking more people to come forward and donate blood and save more lives. Because, of course, without blood, we lose many lives which actually needed them urgently. And I'll start with you, Alice.
Thank you. I will start by saying thank you to NTV for giving us an opportunity to tell Kenyans thank you for the good work that they've been doing in terms of donating blood to save a life, and appealing to every other Kenyan to just create time and donate a unit to keep the heart, to keep the world beating, and assuring you that your blood is going to be safe and it is going to go a long way to saving a patient's life. It is never enough. It's not something that we can stock for the next 12 years. Every unit that is donated is just goes like off the shelf. You donate today, tomorrow that unit is given. So
Yeah.
clearly it is never enough. We have to keep on donating if we want to keep the world beating. Thank you.
And I think that you point to and I think Dr. Kilonzo would want to respond to this, because then it means we don't have to say this is blood donation period or something, because after 42 days, after all. So that means literally every day should be blood donation day.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. World Blood Donor Day and this period is for us to thank Kenyans who have come out, who have donated,
Yeah.
who have continued to show faith and willingness to save a life.
Yeah.
Just reminding us there is no substitute for blood. If a patient doesn't get blood or blood products when they need it, the likelihood is they will die, because it is usually a last mile saving intervention by any healthcare provider, any doctor. I want to say thank you to all the Kenyans who have donated, who have come out of their way. I want to say thank you to the media, because while there have been a lot of negative stories, we've also seen the media really help by providing information. And we are very happy to invite all of you to be able to just come to the center, so that even as you're running the stories of blood, you're showing people, when we say processing blood, what does it actually look like? What does it mean? What happens? When we say distributing blood, what sort of cold chain equipment do you need? How is it done? So that you can get information out there. And I want to really be able to thank the ministry, because the ministry has been very supportive in the reforms that we are doing, and thank the counties. I cannot end without saying thank you again to the donors. It is because of you that many Kenyans are alive. Asanteni sana.
All right, wonderful. We have been talking about the issue of blood shortage in Kenya and what we can do to replenish our stocks. I think my key takeaway myself is indeed blood is a lifesaver, and there is always someone who needs it at any time. So if you can donate, donate it. And also another key takeaway is that blood has no substitute. We can't manufacture it, we can't mine it, we can't process, we can't mix it with water, and of course we cannot use it for 10 years. So that means we need to do this all the time, as regularly as you can. If you're safe, if you have the ability to donate, please go right ahead and do that. Before I close, some quick feedback, the last ones, yes, because I think Kenyans are really active. Yes, the question was, have you ever donated blood? Please share your experience with us. Let's get to see the last ones. Bunyali Pichore says, but it's a sad situation to see when Kenyans are willingly come out to donate blood in order to help those needy cases, and the same blood is sold. Thank you, Bunyali. We have addressed that. And then Michael says, yes, but some don't give out blood group cards. I think both of those issues we have had them responded to adequately. But Laban Wek says they should also tell Kenyans why they freely donate blood during this campaign, but the same blood is taken to private hospitals where they are charged millions of shillings to get transfused. Tell Kenyans why blood is sold. I think that's the last one, and I think all of those three issues have been adequately addressed by my panelists and my guests this morning. So we hope, of course, that you are following the conversation, and you, of course, got the responses that you needed. Many thanks this morning to Dr. Nduku Kilonzo. She's the head of the Kenya National Blood Transfusion, as well as Alex Mbui. She's a principal manager, quality management system, also at the Kenya National Blood Transfusion Service. We go for a quick break, but when we come back, we sample more feedback that we have received and also tell you what else is happening across the African continent and across the world. Don't go too far.